incorporated into this building specifically. And then we'll talk a little bit of fire safety stuff, but I also want to talk about the evacuation stuff, because that seems to get a little confusing. And Julie's, I think, provided that document probably, or the document with the fire safety plan.
Yeah, it's in their resident manual.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll talk a little bit about that, and again, get into why some of that stuff is important. So again, I want to talk about how we serve the community, building safety features, and then we'll get into some fire safety tips. So a little bit about our organization. We are a paid-on-call staffing model. So with the exception of my position, this is my full-time career. I get to do this every day. But all of our firefighters, 31 firefighters in the community, are all paid on call. So what that means is they have jobs outside of the fire department. They basically volunteer their time when they can. So outside of work, outside of family functions, and they respond to emergency calls, they do training, they do public education, outreach events when it fits into their schedule. So it's a big, big commitment from our folks. And I'll show you on the next slide what that means hour-wise. But again, it's a really important service to the community we provide. I want to reiterate, we're here to help in whatever manner we can. By no means do I want anyone to think you're bugging us if you're calling us. We are more than happy to come out and help with anything we can. And I'll talk a little bit about what we do in a second here. Last year we responded to 372 calls for service. So we're seeing our call volume go up, obviously, as the city continues to grow, but 372 times we are out. So about once a day, the fire truck left the station to go do something within the community. Fire is a very small portion of what we do. About 5% of our actual call volume is fire stuff. The bulk of what we do is EMS. So you might say, why is the fire department showing up to a medical if I call 911 for an ambulance? We've got staff that are medically trained to come help and deal with some of those really serious medicals. So we don't come on all the medicals, but we go to some serious medicals. And we can really help provide some patient care until an ambulance can get there and help that person and get them to the hospital. So that's a really important part of what we do. And again, like I said, we want to come out and help. So on top of EMS, we do fire suppression stuff. We do rescue services as well. So if somebody's in a car accident and needs to be extricated from the vehicle, if somebody falls in the lake or falls through the ice, or gets thrown off a horse out in the park, some things like that, we do all that rescue stuff as well. Hazardous materials response, so anything like that, and then fire prevention and public education as well. So again, that keeps our staff really busy, and you can see what that looked like last year. We logged just under 10,000 hours of staff time last year. So about half of that was spent on emergency calls, another half on training. So our group trains every single week. We are together training in some capacity. Because of all that's kind of expected of us and we need to be able to perform, to do our duties, we are constantly training on something new. This has taken a hit over the last couple of years with COVID. You know, a year and a half ago, we wouldn't be doing this. We wouldn't be in this room together talking. So our public education hours went down quite a bit. They got cut in half at least, but we still were out 127 hours of public education time last year. So that's a little bit about the department itself. Like I said, don't ever hesitate to call us. You're not bugging us by any means. We're definitely here to help you in any capacity. So I want to get a little bit into the building safety features, and again, specific to this building, but we'll talk about the fire sprinkler system, the alarm system, fire extinguishers, the smoke and seal alarms that are actually in your units. I'll talk about the elevator and why we don't want to use that, the corridors, and then a key system that we have for the building itself. So, sprinkler heads. Your entire building here is protected by a sprinkler system with the exception of the attic. So the attic is unsprinkled, basically the rest of the building is. Sprinklers unfortunately get a bad rap sometimes, and a lot of it's because of what we see in Hollywood movies. So if you saw this room in a Hollywood movie, every single sprinkler head in here would be flowing water. Definitely not the case. And you know, unfortunately, people portray that as it's gonna flood my house, my basement, something like that. So how a sprinkler would work, these you have concealed. The temperature, if a fire started here, that temperature is gonna get hot enough, that disc is gonna fall off. And then there's a little bulb in there that you can kind of see in this picture. That bulb heats up enough. In this case, they're 155 degrees. So it gets 155 degrees, that bulb breaks, and it lets water come out. A sprinkler like this will probably cover about a 16 by 16 foot square pattern. People get worried about what's going to cause water damage. Those will put out about 20 gallons a minute. So it's flowing, a significant amount of water, but the smallest fire hose we would ever bring into a fire flows 150 gallons a minute at the minimum. So we will do far more damage with a fire hose than one of these sprinkler heads will do. About 98% of fires are contained by one single sprinkler head. So very, very rare that multiple heads activate, but usually this, if a fire started here, that head is gonna contain that fire. It won't fully extinguish it, but it'll prevent it from growing any further. So we have to come in and kind of do mop up, clean up, and put the rest of it out. What you can do to help ensure that these devices work is they need clearance to let that pattern of water develop. So I call it looks like a big umbrella when it comes up. We only need 18 inches. So you're good with that. So within your units, I think most are probably sidewall heads. There might be some out of the ceilings, but if you can help maintain an 18-inch clearance from below those, it will ensure that those devices operate in the event of an emergency. So that's our fire sprinkler system. The fire alarm system, and you've kind of got two systems in here, and we'll talk about this. So the main fire alarm system is what we set off a half an hour ago. That covers notification and detection for the entire building. So there's various devices throughout the building. Back on the back wall here, that white thing is called a horn strobe. It's going to make noise and it's going to flash a light telling us that there is some sort of fire event or fire emergency. So that's our main fire alarm system. When that is activated for any sort of fire event, it automatically calls the fire department. So what we did tonight was we pulled a pull station in the closet over here and we let that system play out. And I stopped the actual fire trucks from coming, but they called me and said, you have an alarm at this building. So anytime that system is activated, the fire department is going to be dispatched and we're going to be en route. So if that's somebody burns food and it sets off a smoke detector in a common corridor, if a sprinkler head breaks or is activated by some means, it's going to send the fire department. It will not send us for some maintenance stuff, which Julie's kind of aware of what that means, and there's maintenance that goes along with that system. It's also interconnected with the HVAC system, the fire sprinkler system, and the elevator. So I'll talk a little bit about the elevator and why we don't want to use it, but in a couple of minutes here. But the elevator is connected to the fire alarm system. So if it activates, if the fire alarm system activates, it's going to have the elevator do some things, and we'll talk about what that is in a little bit. There are notification devices within your units. So I think you guys just have a speaker, a little white speaker on the wall. If that sounds, that's the main fire alarm system for the building. The little round detectors that you would see in any normal house, those are not connected to this system. So I view this system more as building wide, whereas the detectors in your units specifically are kind of confined just to that unit. So if you burn food in your kitchen and you've got some smoke or something generated, it won't necessarily set off the full building alarm system, but it's going to set off your local detectors. Do you have a question?
Oh yeah, because I've had that happen, and they're loud.
Yes, they are loud. So they are meant to get you out of bed in the middle of the night and wake you up and let you know there's a problem. So.
And we learned that if your smoke alarm goes off in your apartment and because you burnt food, don't open your front door or that sets off the building alarm. Open the back door, open your back door like your patio door.
I think that's kind of the ends of the corridors. I think there's a smoke detector on each end of the corridors in the hallway, and that will do that. So again, that's the entire building fire alarm system. Fire extinguishers, you've got various fire extinguishers just kind of located in common areas throughout the building. We're really shifting our mentality on these. If you use one and you can't put it out with that fire or can't control it, don't attempt anything further. At that point, if one extinguisher can't control this, that fire is too big at that point. If you are going to attempt to use this, again, by no means, if you're not comfortable doing so, don't attempt this. Because you do have to get somewhat close to a fire to actually make one of these effectively work. 10 to 15 feet probably we're talking. If you ever do that, don't not leave yourself an out. So, you know, if there was a fire here, I wouldn't want to pin myself in this corner. I want my back to the doors so I can get out if, you know, if that doesn't work. So if we do attempt to use the fire extinguisher, it's the pass method it's called. So there's a safety pin in there, we would pull the pin out. We aim the hose or the little nozzle that's on that at the fire. We'll squeeze the handle to activate it, and then we want to sweep the base of the fire. So again, if you've got some of these in your individual units, great. Otherwise, they're in your corridors, parking garages, places like that. So again, the fire service is really kind of taking the approach that not advocating for really using these a lot. And we'll talk about what we're seeing with fires in a little bit here. So your smoke and carbon monoxide alarms, these are the individual alarms within your unit. So they're in your bedroom, or each of your bedrooms, they're outside in a common area within 15 feet of a bedroom for carbon monoxide detection. So again, that's a local alarm specifically within your unit. It is not connected to the main fire alarm system at all. And it's really intended just to notify the occupants of that specific unit. These get to be a maintenance nightmare, so if you're here in about 9 years, you'll start running into it. They have a 10-year life on them, and then they're junk. They fail. So what that means is the sensor that's in there to sense smoke basically goes bad, and typically when they fail, they alarm. So it causes us a lot of nuisance alarms. About 5% of our call volume last year was specifically nuisance alarms. People think, my smoke detector is making noise, I need to call 911, when in all reality, it's just a bad alarm that's telling you, fix me, replace me. So all of your detectors are hardwired, and then they have battery backups as well. So batteries will expire, and it'll start chirping at you about once every 30 seconds. If it's chirping, that means it's time to replace the battery, and I'm sure you've got some maintenance staff that can help out with that, or whatever that would look like. So again, that's the local unit. I want to stress the importance of the carbon monoxide detection as well. So outside of the sleeping areas, there's a combination smoke and carbon monoxide detector. Carbon monoxide is a colorless, odorless gas. You don't know it's there. It's caused by incomplete combustion. So if we're not burning something clean, typically a fuel-fired appliance, it's a very poisonous gas that will unfortunately just kind of put people to sleep. You'll start getting flu-like symptoms. And if concentrations get high enough, it is lethal. So please take it seriously if they do alarm for carbon monoxide. And the detector will tell you that. So elevator, we'll talk about the elevator a little bit. Again, we do not want you to use this in the event of an emergency. A couple of reasons why. If the fire alarm system detects an issue, it overrides the controls of the elevator. In this case, it's gonna bring the elevator back to first floor right here, and it's gonna open the doors and let it sit. So you won't have any control over it. If you're in there when that happens, it's gonna take you to first floor, open the doors, and that's it. If that detector activates, if you're on third floor and you're trying to get down, you won't be able to call the elevator back up. So it basically goes into kind of a lockout mode. And what it's doing is it's preserving the elevator for us. We can walk in, we've got keys to override that elevator, and we can use it for getting people, moving equipment, that kind of stuff. Julie has provided us with a list of residents that need assistance getting out of their units. So that's something we would do then, is use that elevator to our advantage to help move people or evacuate in the event of an emergency. So we will take control of that. So again, the best thing we can do is utilize the staircase to get down if we have to. And we'll talk about that in a little bit further. But again, that's how the elevator will function. Your fire rated corridors and doors. So the main corridors of the building, like out here, down this end, and then kind of making the horseshoe back, it's all fire rated construction, and it would be a minimum of an hour. So why that's important, obviously the corridors are the way out of the building at some point when we need to. if there was a fire in like in one of the apartments, that gives us an hour of time before that fire would technically burn through and get into that corridor. So it's protecting and preserving the integrity of our corridors. I was up about a month ago and did an inspection, and we talked a little bit about the smoke seals that are around the doors. So if you look at the inside door frame of your apartment, there's a black rubber gasket around it. And that is a smoke seal to prevent smoke from coming into the unit itself. So what we want to do is ensure that in the event of an emergency, that door seals and makes good contact with that black smoke seal. And that's one of the reasons why we don't want objects or devices on the bottom of the door dragging. When we start causing friction, it could prevent the door from closing, or not let it close at all, not get a good seal, and then let some of that smoke infiltrate that unit. So that's why we're advocating for not doing that. The other thing we want to do for protecting our corridors is ensure that we don't have objects that are going to cause people to trip or impede travel. So we talked with Julie a little bit about not having items out in the hallway, as long as they don't prevent or impede the means of egress from your unit. So if you've got something sitting next to your door in the little bump out, obviously we don't want it protruding into your doorway opening or into the common area path of travel down the main hallway. So that's why we're looking at that stuff. And then we use what's called the Knox Key System to gain access to the building. So there's right outside the front lobby here, there's a master key box that looks something similar to that. We have a building master key, just one of these. I don't normally keep it in my pocket, but we're using it tonight. But this is in a key retention system in all of our trucks. So what's nice about this is I know anytime somebody pulls a key out, it's an auditable system. But we get into that key box, and then we've got building keys to get into all areas of the building, with the exception of your individual units. So what that means is if there is something that you call 911 for something, if you're able to open the door ahead of time, that really helps us out. If you can't, then we end up calling Julie, and she locks it on remote or unlocks it remotely, but that takes a little bit of time. So if you're able to do so, please unlock the door, and that will help us get there a little quicker. So that's kind of all the stuff I had on the building itself. Are there any questions about that? Yeah.
On that gap underneath the door,
Yep.
won't smoke from the hallway come into the unit?
It would have to get really, really bad, because knowing how smoke is
goes
going to
up.
start up,
Yeah.
and then it's got to bank all the way down. So
Oh, okay.
if we're at a point where we've got that, what we're worried about is that dragging would prevent that door from fully sealing. So that's the bigger concern. So, and then all buildings settle. So buildings will start to move and stuff like that. And even if it seems like a device that's there now, it isn't impeding that. As these buildings start to move, a little tweak or settlement in the foundation will, start moving some things and throw it off a little bit. So, was there another question there?
Oh, I just had a question about the air seal around the door. If that isn't sealed, is that something that will be addressed?
Yep, I said that at the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something I'm working on right now.
So if one of the gaskets is,
Yeah, and the building did settle, absolutely. That might be part of the issue.
Yep.
But I have a option that I'm proposing to see if it's okay that we do, and I did get his approval, so I think that will help us get it through to get that gap underneath. And then as far as the doors, because of the building settling, I do think that that's caused issues with the doors. Because sometimes we have issues with the doors, like maybe not locking or having a hard time, and then if we just do an adjustment, that helps. So we'll be working on all that, for sure.
I think we found a door in the exercise room last time.
Yeah.
It settled enough that it wouldn't allow the door to fully shut as well. So it's kind of a given with new construction,
Yeah.
it's going to move a little bit. So, all right. Well, let's talk a little bit about some fire safety tips. So, unfortunately, the newest data that's available for us to review is from 2018. So this is a couple years old already. But about half of our structure fires out there are caused by cooking. So, cigarettes used to be the top cause. And fortunately, with people smoking less, fire safe cigarettes, that number is really plummeted. So cooking is our top cause of fires. Of that 45%, about 25% of that is unattended equipment. So people put something on the stove, they walk away, they forget about it. 14% is something actually that got turned on or off, and then 12% is combustibles were too close. So people had a dish towel, a roll of paper towels sitting there, and that caught fire. In 2018 in the state of Minnesota, 3 people died as a result of cooking fires. 18 were injured, burnt in some manner as a result of that, and about $3.6 million in damage just from cooking fires. So these can be pretty devastating to those that are involved. So one of the newer devices that's out there right now is what's called a stovetop fire extinguisher. So something like this would go either under a microwave or under a hood, and it hangs there like that. It operates similar to a fire sprinkler. It heats up enough and it drops a dry chemical powder out of that onto the stove and extinguishes the fire. So that is an option that's available. You buy a 2-pack, I think you can get them at Home Depot. The last I looked, they were like $80, something like that. So I'll just stick on the bottom of that. I'll show you why something is important like that. So one of the things we see when cooking fires happen is people are cooking oil, using oil and cooking in some manner. And they get it too hot or they forget about it, and it gets too hot and it catches on fire. I'll run this quick. So this is some cooking oil on fire. About 8 ounces of oil is all that's in there, and about 2 ounces of water we dumped in that. So oil will start on fire about 475 degrees. I'll run that one more time. So that pan of oil is burning right now, and literally we dumped like 2 ounces of water in that. Unfortunately, this video cuts it off completely, but that flame went about 20 feet in the air. Now, we're outside doing this in our parking lot. If you take that same situation, put it in a kitchen or something like that, the results are going to be devastating, especially if somebody's there. So that is why if we do have a cooking fire, the worst thing we can do is put water on it. So our best options for extinguishing that are smothering it somehow with a pan, a cookie sheet, covering it, something like that. We do not want to put water on it, or we let a device like that if we've got it work and knock that fire down. So. All right, so the next one I'll talk a little bit about is the importance of doors closing for the units, and then also why we don't want people necessarily leaving. And, so unless it's your specific unit that has the issue. To preface this video, this is about a 6-minute video, I'll show you. To preface this, about 30 years ago, 40 years ago, if you had a fire in your home, you had 17 minutes to escape that fire from the time the smoke detectors went off to the time the fire went to what's called flashover. Flashover is 1200 degrees. Nobody survives it. The gear we wear doesn't survive it. It burns through our gear. So flashover is, it's gonna kill somebody. Today you have less than 3 minutes. And a lot of it has to do with the furnishings that we put in our homes and everything like that. And if we look at a chair like this material here, I'm sure is some sort of synthetic based product, and it's probably got a petroleum base to it somehow as well. We're not using natural fibers like we used to. The cottons, wools, those types of things that didn't burn like that. Fires today burn very violently, very quick, and the 3 minutes that may be available, if you're on the 3rd floor trying to get out, it might not be viable. So I'll let this run quick. What it is kind of a side-by-side demonstration. They took 2 rooms, 2 bedrooms, set them up identically, lit a fire in a common area outside, basically in a living room, so simulating a living room. The one on the left is, the door was closed the entire time. The one on the right was open.